we've asked one of our newest colleagues, Caroline, with her experience, make a short presentation or point of discussion when it comes to the power of difference. So, please, Caroline, that's good.
Thank you. I'm Caroline Marie Carlson, and I'm a business designer here at Innova Science Park. And I heard that you made some very interesting presentations this morning. You're here to find common areas of challenges, common challenges for the future, and you're here to work to solve these problems or find new ideas to meet the challenges. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah? So let me ask you, what's the most important resource or tool for innovation? What do you need to find new solutions?
People.
People, yes. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. People, and I'm here to talk about that. How diversity, how the differences that we have, each of us have, drives innovation. I like to call it the power of differences. And what differences are we talking about?
Experiences.
Experiences,
Skills.
skills, exactly. Knowledge,
Sex, cultural background.
yes. Sexual preferences, gender, cultural background, of course.
Nationalities.
Nationalities. Yes. We are complex and we are a lot of things. It's not easy to describe all the possible differences in a picture, but you have mentioned some of the differences that bring different perspectives to problem solving. Because each of these differences makes us see things differently. And when we see things differently, we can contribute in different ways. Anyone of you have children? Raise your hand if you have children or children close by. Have you had a problem and your children could solve it for you? Sometimes?
Yes.
Yeah?
Social media, IT.
Yeah, they know different things, but they also see things from different perspectives. So my daughter is 13. She was 12 last year when we moved to a new house. We moved from a big house to a smaller one, and she got a small room and she has a big bed. And we said, it's only one way you can put your bed in your room. This is the correct way to put your bed in your room. And she loves to redecorate, to move her furniture around. And after 2 weeks, she said, Mom, come help me. I want to rearrange my furniture. And I said, no, it's only one way to put your bed, honey. Okay, she said, I do it myself. She has this huge bed. And when I came back, she invented a new way of putting her bed in her room. And after that, she made it again and again. She tried 4 different ways. But I said, no, there's only one way. Why is that? What do you think?
Imagination.
Imagination. And her imagination works differently from my imagination. Other reasons?
Time.
Time. She has more time. Or
Yeah, you don't have the time to help her.
Different needs.
different needs, exactly. I need it to be practical, and she needs to find new ways and be creative. Okay, so I'm amazed by her ability to solve problems or think differently. And when we grow older, our brains grow lazy a bit. We tend to find solutions that are close to the previous solutions we found. And she's not that old and lazy, so she can think creatively still. When we have a problem to solve, we get much more efficient when we can look at it from different perspectives. And all the differences you talked about can bring these new perspectives. And I share some findings from a study called How Diversity Can Drive Innovation. And this study was made with a service of 1,800 professionals, 40 case studies, and numerous interviews and focus groups. This was made in the private sector, but I find the results interesting, and I think it's meaningful for the public sector as well. You can tell me if you agree later on. They focused on two kinds of diversity. The first one is called inherent diversity, and that means the traits that you are born with. Okay, so I'm born Swedish, and I'm born a woman. I'm also born into some kind of beliefs or culture. I could be born gay, for example. Are you with me? The things that we are born into, they are called inherent diversity, inherent traits. And then we have another kind of diversity that is acquired diversity. And that means things that I have learned. It's like you live in another country and you learn about the culture, in-depth learning. Or maybe you work with a certain group of people. If you work as a salesman and you specialize in selling cars to females, to women, then you learn something about what women looks for in a car. Okay? For me, I lived in Japan for a year and I studied Japanese for 2 years. So I have learned something about Japanese culture. I have some understanding that has shifted or changed my perspective of the world. So can you give me some examples of inherent diversity that we have in this room? We take nationalities, for example. How many do we have here? I'm Swedish. Polish.
Japanese.
Japanese. Ah, you're Japanese. Honto. Okay. More? Danish. Some other cultures or?
Dutch.
Dutch? Wonderful. So we have at least 5 nationalities here. We have men and women, for example. So we can say we have at least, as a group, 7 inherent adversities in this group. Diversity. Then we have acquired diversity. I know something about Japan, but not obviously as much as you do. I have also worked with a lot of patient organizations, so I have some in-depth knowledge about some different kind of diseases. So what do you bring to the group? Some examples of acquired diversity.
Well, I've learned English.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. You bring English to the group?
And French. And French.
And French, yes.
Bad Spanish. Very bad Spanish.
Bad Spanish. I can agree with that. We can combine our bad Spanish skills. But maybe some of you lives with a family member with some sort of challenge, mentally or physically challenged, and know about that. Some of you might have in-depth IT-related, computer-related skills. I don't know. I'm sure that you have a lot of skills that you bring to this group. Their research shows that companies whose leaders exhibit at least 3 inherent and 3 acquired diversity traits have something they like to call two-dimensional diversity. So as a group of leaders, if we were a group of leaders, we would bring at least 7 inherent and probably more than 3 acquired diversity traits to the group. Okay? And the research also shows that companies with two-dimensional diversity out-innovate and outperform others. And I think this is interesting because it's so very clear the results. When you bring a lot of differences into a group, you perform better. I'm sure that you have seen other research that shows this, but I think it's interesting with this two-dimensional way of thinking, that we bring a lot of different things into a group and that the results can be amazing. With two-dimensional diversity in the company, employers were 45% more likely to report that the market share grew the year before. They were 70% likely to report that the firm captured a new market. Why is this? Why do you think this is? We talked about new perspective, but what happens when they bring their perspectives into the company? Why can they do this?
The previous solutions get questioned, and then you can innovate, and then you can develop.
Yeah, because if we are similar, we tend to think the same way, but if we bring people with other perspective, they can question and they can come with new ideas.
They have the possibility to foresee more variation in the market.
Yes.
And can adapt to changes in the market, I guess.
Yeah. So the same research shows that if you have one person that can identify with a certain target group, there are 152% more successful in that market. You have a broader understanding of more things with the variation in the group. Good. So the solution of this research is that two-dimensional diversity unlocks innovation by creating an environment where outside-the-box ideas are heard. I think that Charlotte and Torben are not fond of the out-of-the-box idea, but anyway, this is a quotation from this research.
Did the research show anything about if it mattered what sort of diversity there was? Did it matter at all? Was any sort of diversity better than none, or could they see some sort of differences when it comes to this?
They did look at the kind of diversity that you mentioned in discrimination laws, like gender, sexual preference, age, things like that. So they didn't take, for example, experience into account, but certain areas. But it didn't show that it was more effective with men and women, the combination of men and women, than ethnic background and men. It was just a combination to have more than one, to have 3 of each. What do you think happened without the two-dimensional diversity in this study? Of course, they didn't perform as well, but do you have an idea what happened on why? If there were certain groups in the company that didn't come through, for example? It's a tricky question. The research showed that they looked at certain groups in the companies, and it said that without the two-dimensional diversity, and it was 73% of the companies in this study, or 73% of the people participating that worked for companies that didn't have the two-dimensional diversity. So this was a bigger group. And they found that women were 20% less likely to have their ideas heard. It was harder for groups that differed from white, middle-aged, heterosexual men to come through with their ideas. So, and that was true for women and people with sexual orientation that wasn't heterosexual, and also people of color. Okay. So when you have people in your organization and you don't listen to their ideas, what happens?
They quit.
they quit. What happens with the company, if you look at it as an engine,
Stops.
it stops, or at least it can work, but it doesn't have the full function. You don't use all the resources you have. So the result is lower degree of innovation, and they don't perform as well. So I think this is not, when we talk about it, it's not difficult to understand, and I think you have heard it before in other studies that say that diverse groups are more effective. But it's one thing to talk about it and to see the figures, and another one to be part of a group that we create this diversity, then we really, really use the resources we have. If people are the most important resource for innovation, how do we do to be sure, to make sure that we use this resource in the best way? Please talk about this for 2 minutes with your neighbor.
Could I ask you a question about the slide?
Yes.
I don't really understand it. Do you mean that white middle-aged men are more likely to be successful if they're 2D diverse than the three groups, than women and people of color and
Yes.
why is that?
That is because the white heterosexual middle-aged men are the norm for many companies. There are people that run the company, and it's easier if you don't have a diverse group, a leadership group. It's easier to listen. It's easier to listen to the ideas of people that are like you than are different from you. So that's what it says.
But are these white middle-aged men, do they have these diverse skills?
No, it says that most people, if you look at leadership in most companies, it consists to a big degree of middle-aged white men, and when they don't have the diversity, when the group is too homogenic, you tend not to listen to other people's ideas.
Okay.
Is
And the
that
point
clear?
is that the straight white middle-aged men perform, so to speak, at an average compared with the 2D diversity
Yes.
organization, which performs a little better.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Thank you for that clarification. So, please. So, how do you do this? How do you create a culture or a group where you really can use the resources?
That is the question.
Kan ni kanske hitta det på eller grupp här eller att ni är något annat sammanhang? Det är väl arbetsplatser.
Some departments within a municipality is dominated by the same age group, same education, same background. There's for instance, in our school department in Estland, they all have a teacher. They're all middle-aged. They're not all male. The majority of them are women, actually. And some other departments, including my own, are very diverse.
Is that because you do different kinds of things?
Oh yes.
I think you have to be brave when you recruit, because it is very easy when you're recruiting to look for I think it's not conscious but unconscious. You're looking for a person like yourself or similar to yourself, and you sit in interviews and you feel a connection and
But every textbook for leadership will warn you against this.
yeah,
Right?
but still.
Still.
Or you actually look for someone, especially if you have someone quitting, you look for a need that one. So you could have person X, then need a new X.
Because if X has been successful, then you've got the same kind
You
of
want to
skills.
say
Well, Y might be even more successful because Y is different.
formell
But I think brave is a good word, because if you bring in why might question why doing this and why to stay if you're not open to change. So that is a leadership question.
This is very much the sort of the Western society. If you have this kind of deviation, I think it's like it. So this is but I mean, in our side, you need diversity. You need to generate new skills and acknowledge them.
Because I also think here in our municipalities it's very
Homogeneous.
Yeah, homogeneous.
So,
It's very.
what do you think? What do you need to do? Let me hear what you talked about. What did you talk about? What do you think we need to do to use the resources we have in the best way?
You said that you need to be brave, organizations need to be brave, but also that you need to be aware of this.
Yeah.
That awareness is perhaps step one.
So, she said that organizations have to be brave. You have to be brave in order to do something different from what you did before. And also,
That you need, of course, to be aware of this.
yeah. So to be aware is a good start, and then to be brave enough to actually do something differently. Thank you very much. And what about you? What did you say?
Yeah, we discussed that on examples, our organization, which we work with, but awareness is one thing, but also using different tools to actually make the organization more flexible. I mean, to try to bring new people to the organization.
Yeah.
Young graduates, for instance, they have very good ideas, and they often are not afraid to say what they think, and they're quite skillful with that. And by using this input, you can actually change a lot of the company,
Yes.
and change the perspective of those who are already there. Those white middle-aged men or middle-aged women,
Yeah.
doesn't matter, but you talk about homogeneity. And we also, at the organization, try to experiment with the internships for students, for instance. So we, at the moment, have one Italian student coming from Italy to us for 6 months working with the projects. So she has a totally different background and different ideas, and that works quite well, actually. It changes a couple of things as we speak.
Great. Great. Anyone else?
I think that looking at the municipality in Poland, we don't have this inherent diversity. We are all Polish. It can be seen. So I think that the fresh blood is very important. So the age diversity, because of the level of experience and because of the knowledge, we are open to Europe, to the whole world since 1990. So the older person studied only another system reality. Now we are open, so many younger people have an experience from studying from the best knowledge from the other parts of Europe and other parts of the world. Yes. So I think it's rather important for us.
Yes. Great. Thank you very much. Anyone else to share your discussions?
Where I come from, we sometimes talk about the necessity of making a period of what we call the spaghetti organization. In order to take in people from other departments, to create a group of people with a high percentage of diversity, in order to to work with this problem because we can see that it's necessary to have people with a health professional background, sociological background, technical background, whatever it might be, in order to solve this particular problem.
So you put together teams to solve a certain problem.
And this spaghetti organization will run for half a year or whatever it might be. Very interesting.
Very good idea.
And very good results also.
Thank you. Charlotte?
I think it's very important to find ways of how to organize the diversity, like you're talking about this spaghetti organization, because it's so much easier to innovate and work together with people that you understand fully, that you have the same background. So you actually need more tools of how to collaborate. And it's much more important, the workshop methodology, the spaghetti model, or other type, the toy project that we run. You have to be aware of that the toolbox for interaction is much more important. Otherwise, you go into your own tracks of the person that has the technical background, that looks in a certain way, takes the lead in the group. So you really have to be careful of how you organize the interaction and how the knowledge. Otherwise, it's so easy to go into production that you usually, and you kind of lose the idea. You think that you order people to do what they usually do, but when you work with innovation, knowledge should interact to create something new, and that's not the production process.
Right.
And a lot of people have only the production process in their head and not the innovation process, and you have to be aware of that it's a different way of working together. So it requires toolboxes.
Because it can be really challenging. Diversity is challenging. It's, as you say, it's much easier to choose people that think the same way as you do. But with tools and methodology, you can do a lot. Thank you. Yes?
I think also it's about using, giving up on your prestige. Because amongst and within professionals, you know, we have a lot of knowledge, and everybody, some are unwilling to share it, and others are unwilling to letting go of it in order to absorb. I mean, it's in all of us. in some way.
Absolutely. Thank you. Very important. Torben?
I think one little bit like Charlotte says here, to manage, how actually you manage the teams in diversity. I have a short story of one of our toy teams, and actually it was like 3 persons, and we picked them because they're different professionals.